Well, hello, hello. Happy, marvelous Monday, beautiful people. I hope that you are well. I'm so excited that you are joining me today. I'm your host, Carissa, and today's discussion is going to hit home for many residents, as well as landlords who are residing in the DC metropolitan area. And if you are a landlord, if you are a tenant, or you know someone who is, please tell them to tune in right now. If you're watching a replay, thank you so much. I am live on Facebook. I see that I'm live on YouTube. I'm live on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. This is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. I bring information to help the entire rental community. And before I get started, let me just put my disclaimer up because the information that I share is not legal advice. It is, however, the industry's best tips, practices, and recommendations. And so if you have legal questions, I will not be able to answer those. And I do recommend that whether you're a landlord or attorney, or you just simply want to get more information pertaining to this or any other landlord and tenant matter, to definitely speak with a reputable landlord and tenant attorney. So usually, here's how this works. When I'm live, I share information, generic information across the board regarding landlord and tenant matters. Well, today's subject, this is an active case that is currently going on in the District of Columbia. And so one of the things that I always share is this, that the laws are going to be different just depending on the jurisdiction. And so you need to know what the laws are where your rental property is or where you live. Okay. So I wanted to share that information. And if you find that any of the information I share today is of value, please, ma'am, please, sir, like, tag, and share. And if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube, smash that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online. All right, so on YouTube, you can find me, Landlord Lyfe. Lyfe is spelled with a Y, okay? If this is your first time here, welcome. Let me know where you're tuned in from. I love to know where my viewers are tuned in from. So whether it's a geographical location or a platform, let me know that you can hear me okay. If you have questions, if you have comments, remarks, or observations, go ahead and throw it in the comments section, and I will address each and every one of your concerns accordingly. And so today, as we are talking about, and I'm sharing this thought-provoking as well as engaging subject matter, I do hope that as a landlord that you are taking notes. If you are a tenant, I have tips that I'm going to share today. So today we are talking about landlord and tenant war. And it is something that, listen, earlier on in this year, I said that we're going to start to see a lot more lawsuits. And I have said it over and over and over, and we are actually starting to see a lot more lawsuits against landlords. So I know that the pandemic has, it created a space where a lot of tenants were, many justifiable were tenants were not paying rent, right? But then there were a lot of tenants who were not financially impacted by the pandemic, and they chose to not pay the rent. Well, as a result of things that were going on and a lot of laws that have changed to protect the tenant, some people have found themselves in situations where if they didn't pay the rent, then maybe their landlord illegally increased their rents. And so in this case, this here is a matter where the landlord did not make repairs. The judge ordered this landlord to make repairs, and they still refused to make repairs. And so I'm going to go a little deep into this subject because there are a lot of situations that are happening throughout the United States. So this is not just isolated to Washington, D.C., although I'm sharing this case, which is active in D.C. This is something that's happening throughout the United States. I get emails, I get calls, I get text messages. I'm inboxed almost daily, but definitely weekly regarding matters such as what I'm sharing today, where landlords are sometimes not knowledgeable of what they can and cannot do. And one of the things that I always tell people is this: When I'm working with clients, when I'm doing consulting or I'm auditing a company and their books and their systems, and it's very simple, is that what you don't know can and will hurt you. All right. And so as a property owner, if you own property and if you have someone managing your property, it is so important to make sure that your property management company, your firm, the property manager is knowledgeable and aware of the laws in that jurisdiction. Listen, the government, the laws don't care whether or not you know it or not. It is an expectation that because it is a business, that you are treating it like a business. One of the things that I always say, this is my philosophy, is that if you treat your business like a business, it's going to pay you like a business. However, if you treat it like a hobby, well, it's going to pay you like a hobby. And here is how many property owners treat their business like a hobby. They put their destiny, their fate in the hands of someone else. And I get it that when you're managing, when you're paying a management company to oversee your properties and your business, it is, I guess it's an expectation that the person, the company that you're hiring, know what they're doing. Well, some do, some don't. Here's the thing, laws change. Things can change several times a year. And if you have a property manager or a property management firm that's not keeping up with the laws, it is not doing you any good. And so as a property owner, I strongly recommend that you do consistent follow-ups to make sure that whoever is managing your property for you is doing you and your residents, as well as the rental asset, a good service, because otherwise you're throwing money down the drain, paying someone who is setting you up for failure. Now, I'm not saying that it's an intentional setup, but if they don't know, then again, remember I said what you don't know can and will hurt you. And so sometimes when people don't know the law, it's a setup for failure. Okay, so I want you to plan accordingly. We are coming upon the end of fiscal year 2023. We're getting ready to go into 24. And I want a lot of people to understand that there is a better way to manage your rental property business. And so this is why I do this each and every Monday. It costs you absolutely nothing but your time to show up on Mondays from 7:30 to 8, just depending on the discussion. I might go a little bit over, but absolutely nothing but your time to show up to get this free information. Now, of course, if you want to hire me as a consultant, if you want to hire my team and I to come in and to help train your staff, to do inspections for you, to show you how to set up your systems and make sure that you have policies and all these things in place, we would love to help you. All right. But let me get into the conversation because I know that a lot of people have shown up today for that information. So before I do that, let me go to the comment section. I want to acknowledge those of you who are here. Hello, Jackie. Thank you so much for tuning in. Beautiful. I love your comment. You said that means your property management firm is keeping up with training employees. But here's the thing, Jackie, that should be happening. But you, Jackie, I know that you're not surprised because you're connected with the who's who in the city. But a lot of people might be surprised, Jackie, to find out that some property management firms, they may be doing training. But is the training effective? Is the training sufficient? Is a training based on new laws, or is it the same old stale old soup, right? So it's not enough to just do the training, which some do, some don't. And I commend companies who are investing in their employees, but unfortunately that is not happening across the board. And obviously it didn't happen in this case, in the matter that I'm sharing today. And so it is unfortunate because a lot of tenants were impacted by this. All right. So if this is your first time tuning in, again, welcome. And so today we're talking about rent wars. This landlord filed for bankruptcy and the tenants are now in jeopardy. And so I am so delighted that you are joining me today for the discussion. And I look forward to having this engaging conversation and discussion. So again, please drop all your comments, your remarks in the comment section. I want to make it as user-friendly and interactive as possible. And so here in this matter that I'm discussing today, a DC Superior Court judge ordered across the board, okay, 50%, a 50% cut in the rents for about 2,500 families. That's a lot. So let me just go low scale. Let's just use an average even number of $1,000 for 2,500 families. Let's just hypothetically say that the rents are all $1,000. This judge cut the rent in half, okay, because the landlord failed to maintain that rental property according to housing code standards. So that means that the property was not decent, it was not safe, it was not sanitary, okay? And so as a result, this estimated to approximately $5 million in rent credit to the tenants. I'm gonna just put a quarter in a meter and park there. I'm gonna repeat that, and then I'm gonna pause. $5 million in rent credit is the estimate of what that looks like. In the comment section, somebody just put wow. $5 million. As a matter of fact, it was more than 2,500 residents, 2,500 residents. Listen, that is reckless. I don't know who was responsible for training the property manager, the regional manager, the staff, the administrative staff, but whoever was responsible did a really bad job. And so this is what I want owners to know. I get that sometimes as an owner, you may not know the day-to-day ins and outs of managing your property, but I promise this is a costly mistake. It cost this owner over $5 million. So that's just a credit that's owed to the residents. Now, that doesn't include the cost of maintenance and repairs and renovations and extermination, capital improvement. That's a separate figure. So you add all of that on top of this, that was a costly mistake. And so before this property had become in a deplorable condition, in that rental community, it was one of the communities in Washington, D.C., where a lot of Black middle class were proud to call home. Now, this property was built in 1965, okay? And I'm sure that over the years, they may have done repairs. I don't know about renovations and capital improvement projects and things of that sort. They should. I don't know. I've never worked there before. I've never done any consulting. I've only visited the property, but that was many, many years ago. But it was a really nice property. They have a swimming pool. They have parking. And for whatever reason, things just fell to the wayside in a major way, okay? And so the city, DC OAG, had this statement. But before I read the statement, let me go to your comments. Okay, Jackie, I see that you said mostly no. You said, hello, thank you so much for tuning in from the YouTube channel. What about the housing agency not processing matters in a timely manner? I have not been paid since May of 2023. I'm told that my tenant did not do recertifications. I am definitely going to address this first before I get into the rest of this. And so I do know that the housing agency has gone through a turnover, right? And so there's new leadership in place. And I want to assume, let me not assume that I know which housing agency. So if you would drop in the comment section, which housing agency, because there are a lot of housing agencies. All right, so I just want to make sure that we're clear. And I want to respond to this accordingly. So if you would drop the housing agency in the comment section, so I'll know which housing agency is responsible for you not being paid because you were told that the tenant did not recertify. And then I would like to address that. All right, so Jackie, you said, but this is a Section 8 building. HUD will put it up for sale. Frustration. Listen, so that means that this owner, and I won't state the owner's name, but this owner has a contract with HUD. Okay, so those units are under contract, and there should be checks and balances in place every year. Well, the pandemic changed that, but every year, every few years, the housing agency, whether it's HUD or another third party entity, when that happens, they go out, they inspect the property, they're looking at the books, they're looking at the records to make sure that it is in compliance. And so, Jackie, I see that, but this article goes back to May of, I think it's May of last year. I think it's May, but it's definitely last year. All right, so let me come back to you. You said no wonder they are going into bankruptcy. Absolutely. Okay, so you said DC Housing Authority. All right, so here's the thing. So let me go back to your comment here. Yes, Jackie, I know that no HUD inspections during COVID. So there still should have been, and I'm gonna come back to your comment about the DC Housing Authority, but Jackie, that's a good point. But to that, and although the HUD inspections were waived during COVID, management, this is just my opinion. In my opinion, management leadership still had a responsibility to make sure that the rental property was still decent, safe, and sanitary. And so, although there was a restriction, at some point the restriction was lifted, and it was the management team, the owner's responsibility to make sure that they, first of all, notify the tenant that they were starting to do inspections again. So they should have sent notices out. Hey, the HUD waiver is over. We're now conducting housing inspections. We are now going to implement a inspection maintenance program and put all of those units in rotation, start inspecting. So they should have been going through those units, right, for their records to identify the condition of all of those properties. I mean, all of those doors. So every apartment, 2,500, they should have had an aggressive approach to get into each of those units. And the units that they could not get into, the best thing they should have done would have been to document units that they were not able to get in and follow up. But they should have been proactive. Although, they were not required to do inspections. Listen, Jackie, I get it, but here's the thing: the pandemic, the COVID waiver, that was over in at least over a year, right? So management should have gotten in to do these inspections before allowing it to get to that point. I'm sure, Jackie, that these tenants complained. I'm sure they had complaints before COVID, right? This property did not just get into this deplorable condition overnight or because of the pandemic. All right. So there had to be a buildup of lack of repairs, lack of responses, and it was negligent on management part. Okay. So now let me go back up to your comment about the DC Housing Authority, and you have not been paid since May of 2023. You were told that your tenant did not recertify. So let me just suggest that you do this. Reach out to the supervisor at the housing agency. If that housing supervisor is not responding, reach out to the deputy director of the voucher program to find out if in fact the tenant has been terminated, because sometimes they'll send out letters stating that tenants are going to be terminated. However, tenants can request a hearing to be reinstated. And I've seen that sometimes the housing agency may have the paperwork. Maybe it's been misplaced. Maybe, the worker hasn't gotten to it. Maybe the worker haven't checked their emails, and that happens. Okay, that does happen. So follow up with the deputy director of the voucher program. Email me. I will provide you her name, her email address. You email her as soon as I respond to your email to follow up on this, because if in fact that tenant can prove that they submitted their recertification documents timely to their worker, then it's ultimately the worker's negligence that they did not complete the recertification. So I won't necessarily say accept that. I would definitely say look into it, because things do happen for sure. You can take that to the bank. All right. All right, Jackie, you say it. True. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. You said, what can be done to address the loitering in front of our properties? MPD takes no action. Great question. And so with that, one of the things that I would suggest is if you can identify the problem tenant, send a letter to that apartment. You want to be able to document verbally, with pictures, with videos, what's happening, what's going on. And so in a situation where MPD is not taking any action, I would recommend that you reach out to that PSA commander and say, hey, listen, we have this loitering problem. The crime is up in this area. We need more police presence. You can request a meeting. If they are not responding, in your email to the commander, make sure you get their name, get their contact number, get their email address. I promise that documentation beats conversation any day. So you want to email that PSA commander requesting that you see more police presence in the area. If you do not receive a timely response, you can always include city council on those emails. Request a meeting. I'm telling you what works. I've had to do this for a rental community that I manage. It was a troubled community with over, I think in that community, there were 372 doors. And it was a high crime area where they did shootings in broad daylight. And I was successful in getting police presence on the property. I walked the property with the police. I walked the property with my team. I walked the property with part-time officers who we had to hire to come in to help us. And it was a great success, but it will take time, because when the bad seeds, they know the schedule, they know your routine. So for instance, you start walking the property with the police. Don't walk the property by yourself. Make sure that if it's you, that you're with somebody else, or if your team is going out, that they go out in at least in twos. Okay. So that's the recommendation. But sometimes when you start to do that, they'll pay attention to the hours, they'll pay attention to the time, they'll pay attention to the day. And usually when all of that dies down, when they don't see people walking the property, they don't see the police, they begin to hang out again. And so one of the things that I shared with, and recently I shared with a client of mine, is that another thing that you could implement or consider implementing is like a resident watch type of committee where you get tenants involved. And if the rental property is in Washington, D.C., the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, they do have an anonymous number that the tenants can text and call to report situations. And I know that especially in high crime areas, tenants, they are fearful, they are afraid to call the police in fear of retaliation. But I would strongly recommend that you maybe consider that. Maybe if I don't know if you send out newsletters to your tenants, but maybe consider sending out newsletters. And in that newsletter, maybe implement a say something, see something, say something campaign, where if your tenants are seeing anything, they say something. And this is something that they can do with DC Metropolitan Police Department anonymous tip line. It costs them nothing. Nobody will share their information. So hopefully that helps. All right. So April, you said face-to-face inspection started back in April. That's good. Now, in some properties and communities, it started before then, but in any event, whether it was April of this year, April of last year, management should have gotten in to do those inspections and document it. Now, I don't know if it happened, but it's not just enough to do the inspections. They actually have to make the repairs. And so there are a lot of things that should have been done to avoid this $5 million mistake. Hey, thank you so much. Kim, thank you for tuning in from South Carolina. I got you. So you said, Jackie, early 2022. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so definitely email me and I'll get you that information. All right, April, you said you had to threaten your ANC status for housing management to reply and take action, and that's troubling. Absolutely. Here's the thing. For whatever reason, people may do their job, they may not do their job. And so I strongly support and suggest that you follow up, send documentation, and force action to take place. Because again, it is a business. And can see, here's the thing. So DC is one of those jurisdictions that is pro-tenant. So the laws are strongly in favor of the tenant, which means that landlords have to put in more work. Management have to understand that they have to, again, keep up with the laws, but they have to take action consistently. It's not enough to say something one time and not have anybody else to follow up behind that, because that's sending a clear message to the residents that management don't care. And one of the things that I shared with my students, I'm a property management educator. One of the things that I shared with my students just last week in class is this. Sometimes tenants don't care until they know how much you care, right? So whether it's you or the property management company, tenants don't care until they see that management cares. And how do you show that you care? You operate that business with an iron fist. You make repairs as you promised that you would. You make sure that you're following up with bad seeds, or sometimes I like to call them, and it's not a bashing. I'm a tenant advocate. I'm a landlord and tenant coach. So I'm here for landlords as well as tenants. But sometimes there are tenants from hell in these rental properties. Okay. And so you have to stay on top of that behavior. You're managing that relationship. You're not managing the people, but you're managing that relationship. And so staying on top of those things is a clear message and an easy way to show the tenants that you care. And usually when tenants see that, it's not 100% across the board, but usually when tenants see that, then they'll say, oh yeah, my landlord cares. So you know what, let me clean up, because I know I'm gonna have this housing inspection. And if you are, for instance, if you're conducting inspections and you see damage and you see repairs that the tenants are responsible for, immediately send a letter. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we conducted an inspection today, September the 11th. We noticed that there is a hole in the wall behind or beside the stove, or whatever the deficiency is, whatever the repairs are, whatever is needed, go ahead and send that documentation out right away. All right, documentation beats conversation any day. Okay, Chris, you said thank you. You'll contact the watch officer tomorrow. These folks are not tenants. And yes, the tenants are afraid. And sometimes that happens. And so tenants do have a role as well, because I know that sometimes tenants don't want to get involved, and they shouldn't. But if they say something, they should report. If they see where they're, sometimes these people, they do like to hang out, right? Maybe they're communicating with a resident or maybe a relative of the head of household. And so if the tenants can provide any type of information, that will help you identify at least what area you should focus your attention on to try to correct that problem. Jackie, you said you think DC has grant program for cameras. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing that I do like about DC is that there are some resources. Not as much though for landlords as it is for tenants, but DC do provide resources that sometimes other jurisdictions they just don't provide. And so if you have more information, Jackie, let me know. I'll share that. I do have an email database. I'll send that information out so that people will be aware of what that is. All right, so let me get back into the backdrop of this conversation today. But if you have comments or questions, please go ahead and drop it in. I want to make sure that I'm answering all of your questions today. You said, I know I've been getting a runaround from DC Housing Authority. It's been very challenging. So yeah, email me and I will try to point you in the right direction. And hopefully the tenant has not been terminated. I do know that recertifications at one point, they were severely on backlog. There were hundreds of tenants who had in fact submitted their documentation, but the recertification was not completed for whatever reason. And so email me and I will try to get you connected to someone who can help look into and resolve this matter for you. All right. So thank you for that. All right. So let me get back into this story today. And so this was a $5 million mistake. So here's the statement that DC OAG said: all district tenants are entitled to live in a safe, habitable, code compliant home. These outcomes will have an immediate and positive impact on thousands of people across the city who for far too long have been forced to live in deplorable, unsafe conditions. The OAG went on to add this, that when landlords and property managers violate tenant rights or worse, ignore court orders to repair their properties, OAG will take all necessary measures to ensure compliance with the law. So some months back, I shared another story how there was another company also in Washington, D.C., who were they were responsible for violating laws, and they were prohibited from doing business in the district, so they had to shut their practice down. And unfortunately, like I said, because DC is pro-tenant, there are a lot of measures in place to assist and help tenants, and not as much for landlords. And I know that sometimes that can be stressful, especially when, like, for instance, we see today that an owner has been getting runarounds from a housing agency and have not been paid, because it could be the tenant's responsibility. But then, when you're reaching out to these agencies, you're reaching out to the workers and you're not getting a response, how that negatively impacts you as an owner or a property manager. Is it fair? Absolutely not. And unfortunately, you do have to go above and beyond to make sure that you're getting the results that you are looking for. And so with that, like I said, email me. I'll definitely try to get you connected to the right person who can quickly get this resolved for you. And hopefully you can recoup some of that money. So yeah, definitely email me. So this decision was a result filed by tenants who complained that their owner did not make repairs. They complained about poor living conditions. This lawsuit was spearheaded by one of the residents who had lived at the property for over 40 years. And so let me pause here, because I want you as an owner, as a property manager, to value tenants who have been in the property for a long time, right? Because sometimes it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, right? And so when you have tenants who are knowledgeable, you have tenants who are educated. And by the way, I do have a large population of tenants who watch this show each week. As I give landlord tips, I give tenant tips. Why? Because tenants do have rights. And I want to make sure that the entire rental community is educated. All right. And so here, this company, this was a $5 million mistake, and it's actually costing them more than that. So I see your comments coming in. I want to give some tips for tenants, because I know I have tenants watching. As a matter of fact, I had tenants who asked that I share this article that is an active case in Washington, D.C. Here is what I want tenants to know. I want to help them navigate these challenging times. I know that some of the tenants who live in that building are watching right now. So obviously they know that they have rights, but here is what I want all tenants to know. You have rights. You have the right to sue your landlord for not making repairs if the condition is substandard. Okay? You will have to go to court. But let me just add that just because your landlord or the owner has not made repairs, unless you have gone to court, you are still required to pay your rent. Okay? I've had tenants who said, well, Carissa, my landlord hasn't made repairs in 5 months, so I'm not paying rent. And you shouldn't, right? If your landlord is not making repairs, if your landlord is considered a slumlord, not all landlords are slumlord, okay? But if you have a landlord who is considered a slumlord, then you shouldn't have to pay rent. But unfortunately, that's not a matter that you can take into your own hands. You will have to take your landlord to court. And so if you are in a situation and you decide to not pay rent, I do hope at the very least that you put it in a court registry, or that you put it in some sort of escrow and that money is still available. Because if not, your landlord can take you to court for non-payment of rent. Okay. And if the judge does not agree with you not paying your rent, then that rent is still due. Okay. So that's just the first tip. All right. So here is the second tip for tenants today. It's important. I want tenants to know this. It's important that you know your rights and that you take collective action when your rights are violated. So please, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, reach out to, if you are in some sort of housing subsidy program, reach out to your caseworker, reach out to the inspector's office, reach out to whoever can get you the results. The one thing that I see a lot is that tenants that get on social media and they want to blast their landlords and they want to post pictures and videos and talk about how bad the landlord is. I get it, right? That may make you feel good to get that out, but that's not an effective strategy. All right. So you want to make sure that you're communicating with your landlord in writing, and that could be email, that could be text message. And then you want to follow up with the local authorities who can help you in your situation. Listen, nowadays, everybody has an opinion about everything. Okay. And people are so quick to believe everything that they see on social media and in the paper, right? I'm just so over that. That's just ridiculous to me, but this is the world and this is the age of which we live. All right, here's a third tip for tenants today. A lawsuit victory doesn't necessarily guarantee improved rental conditions. So going back to this story, the landlord had to reduce the rent, had to cut the rents in half, right? And this estimated to about $5 million. Although there was a victory in court, a financial victory in court doesn't mean that the living conditions are going to change. Last year, I shared a story. It was heartbreaking because I know the owner of this property, and very similar to this, the landlord, worse than this, the landlord didn't make the repairs. The landlord didn't reduce the rent. The landlord didn't pay the fines. The landlord was thrown in jail. Yep, I said it. They went to jail because they violated the laws. They didn't listen to the judge. I don't know, maybe they just didn't take the judge seriously, but they learned a valuable lesson. And so, does it mean that the living housing conditions are going to change? Not necessarily. And so, it puts tenants in jeopardy, and it does a great disservice because it's a business. I don't think that any business owner, any rental property owner or investor goes into business just to allow their establishment to go through this. How do you recover from this type of costly mistake? Excuse me. As a landlord or owner, please don't set yourself up. All right. So getting back to you as tenants. So although there is a lawsuit victory, again, it doesn't mean that the repairs are going to be completed. And so this could lead to financial instability for the landlord, which means that now the landlord definitely don't have the money to make the repairs. And so sometimes that could lead to bankruptcy, which is what this case is all about. So the judge ordered this landlord to slash the rent in half, right? This owner filed for bankruptcy. And so it's going to put these tenants in it could put them in a really tough spot, because these tenants now have to figure out where they're going. And if this building is contracted, we saw a viewer who said that this building has a contract with HUD, which is the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. So that's the federal government. And so if in fact there's a contract in place, where are these families going? Are they going to move? Are they going to stay in these deplorable conditions? But I have some best case scenarios. But before I get into that, I have some tips for landlords. Let me go to my comment section, then I'll come back to my tips for landlords. Hey, Yukiko, you said, how do you find those cases that Carissa is talking about? Okay, so Yukiko, Yukiko, email me and I'll send you that link. I'm just connected to a lot of what's happening in the city, especially in Washington, D.C. And so a lot of these cases come across my desk almost daily, but email me. I'll send you links to the 3 that I've shared in this segment today, Yukiko. All right, you said that is a long time and careless mistake on the owner's part. Absolutely. Hey, Lachelle, thank you so much for tuning in. You said, I finally got a response from the case manager to literally give our tenant her paperwork. She has only 8 days to recertify. And I am so happy that you have gotten some positive feedback. And so one of the things that I would encourage, and I'm glad that you brought this up, Lachelle, one of the things that I would encourage and recommend is that if you have received a response from the housing agency that your tenant still has a little time to recertify, contact that tenant. Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, understand that you have to recertify within 8 days. Is there anything that I can do to help you get your recertification completed? Do you need me to take you down there? Do you need me to scan the documents? Would you like for me to copy any information that's required? Right? And so help the tenant to help you to make sure that your money doesn't stop. So thank you for sharing that. You said we did not get paid for September. And so if in fact this tenant is going to recertify, then fingers crossed, Lachelle, that they're going to give you the money for September. All right, so I see your comment here. They don't have a place to live. And so hopefully in this matter, the federal government, hopefully, if the tenants do have to move, and here's what I have seen happen, being extremely knowledgeable with the housing authority, the Section 8 housing authority program and how it works. I've seen some rental communities where in situations like this, HUD steps in and would give that housing agency a contract to administer vouchers for those families. I don't know if that's going to happen in this situation, but that would be ideal, right? And worst case scenario, even if that does happen, 2,500 families, where are they going? In Washington, D.C. It's already hard enough for people to find housing in D.C. that's affordable. So 2,500 families, let's just say HUD comes in and say, hey, housing authority, housing authority, we're going to give you funding to place these 2,500 families who have been impacted because of this slum landlord, right? So let's say they give the housing authority millions of dollars to give out vouchers to 2,500 families. Can you imagine the backlog that there would be for the workers who's already assisting 30,000 families in DC? They're already assisting 30,000 plus families in DC. So to add an extra 2,500, there's going to be a huge backlog. Where are they going? So I'm so watching this case so carefully. Okay, so I see your comment. You wish you knew that. And that's going back to Lachelle's statement that she was able to get a response from the agency regarding her tenant. But see, that's why I do this, because I want to make sure that we're having these type of conversations and bringing landlords as well as tenants together to share this information, because I know that there are a lot of you who don't know this information. You can't reach someone to get this information. And so every week there's a different topic. There's a different subject matter. You can always ask your questions. You can always email me regarding your rental property business. And so, Jackie, you said, when I asked a question, where are they going? You said Maryland and Virginia, hopefully, because here's the thing. Some tenants don't want to move out of DC. Maybe they don't want to go to Maryland. Maybe Virginia won't accept them. So this is a really delicate situation. I'm watching it so carefully. Jackie, you said Baltimore, Charles County, Prince William County, absolutely. And so I hope that some of the tenants who are watching, if it gets to that point where vouchers are issued, then maybe considering leaving DC, because here's the thing about the federal voucher. I'm gonna just park a quarter. I'm gonna put a quarter in a meter, park here for a second. When it comes to Section 8, Housing Choice Voucher Program, those are federal dollars. And so if a tenant is in the federal program, they can transfer their voucher anywhere in the United States. Okay. Now, if the voucher is local, if the voucher comes from local dollars, meaning that DC is given that agency money, the tenants can only stay in DC. So hopefully, if HUD gets involved and they give vouchers, hopefully they're federal vouchers, because anywhere in the United States, including Hawaii, I know that some people may not want to consider Hawaii because of the fires there, but true story, with that federal voucher, they could transfer their voucher to any state in the United States that has a Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. And so that is one of the many benefits of having a federal voucher. And then another advantage that the participants do have is that when they have those federal vouchers, there are usually home ownership programs in place. And I was a little alarmed to find out that DC did not have a lot of homeowners in 2022. Because if you have a voucher, if you can use your voucher to purchase a home, that means that the agency would assist that participant with paying their mortgage up to 15 years. Why don't we see more people utilizing those vouchers to purchase a home? But hey, that's a different segment. That's not for today. Just wanted to share that out there for those of you who are housing participants, something to consider. Take advantage of the systems that are in place, because you don't know how long they're going to be available. All right, Lachelle, you said, is there enough affordable homes for them? Bingo. That's my question. It's not enough. It's not enough. We do see a lot of activity in DC. We see a lot of buildings going up. We see a lot of cranes, and from one corner to the next, you see all these buildings being erected. But is it affordable? I mean, yeah, in many of those communities, there is a small portion of those units that are allocated for, or to make sure that those units are affordable, but it's not nearly enough. And if you have 2,500 that's coming from this building, oh my God, it's going to be, it's a recipe for a train wreck. I can almost assure you. All right. Thank you for your comment here. It would be helpful if housing worked with the tenant on how to maintain their apartment in a good condition to make the housing inspection more easy. I absolutely agree with you. And unfortunately, they do not. Well, let me say that I agree with you. There are some services available, but I agree with you that there should be more, especially because the agency knows that DC is pro-tenant, right? And so, I had a client who recently said, Carissa, DC is just not a good partner. DC is not a good partner for landlords, especially small landlords. I can agree with that, because they will pay for the housing, but what about the services that are available? I know that some agencies don't have enough staff to make sure that there are wraparound services in place. And so I definitely agree that there should be a bump up with the services that are provided for these tenants and families, because here's the thing. People would do things for two reasons, either because they don't know or because they don't care. And so in a situation where these tenants are tearing up the property, they go from one landlord to the next, there should be more education in place to assist these families. Okay. This is what I do. This is what I do, but I don't work for the agency. Okay. So Carissa, could you send out your email or just reply to your notification? Okay, so give me one moment. I'm going to put my email address on the screen for you. You said because Maryland do not play. Nope, absolutely do not. All right, because they don't have an income and they want to keep their benefits. That's so true. All right, April, I'm coming to you. Landlords are tired of serving low to moderate housing programs. I get it. It's like this burnout, because it's like in some communities and some for some landlords, it's a cycle. It's a cycle when you have these low income housing participants who are not educated. You tend to see the same behavior. It may be a new tenant, but it's still the same thing. It's like recycled tenants that's going through the system. And I do believe that educating tenants is the best. That's the best thing that DC can do. Man, if, listen, I have, and let me just put a plug here, just putting a plug here. I have let me just say again, I'm a property management educator. So I do a lot of work with landlords, but I also do education for tenants. And so if the city would entertain me rolling out my program, it is a full service wraparound. I teach tenants how to maintain their rental property, how to communicate with their landlord, how to pay their bill. We set them up with a bank account because we want them to be successful. If they would just consider that, man, it would make a world of a difference. But another day, just wanted to put that plug out there so that those of you who are following me will know what I have been working on. But I promise that education is the key. DC, not just DC, but around the United States, there's this big push to end homelessness, right? But homelessness exists because in many cases, it's a lack of education. They can pour money into they can pour money, they can put resources in place for these tenants. But if these tenants are not educated, it's still gonna be homeless because they don't know how to take care of their place. They don't know how to pay their bills. They don't know how to respect landlords, right? So it's just going to be this never-ending cycle. But I do know and understand this. I'm gonna get back into my tips for landlords, and I'm gonna give you my email address. But here's what I do know. There are poverty pimps in place, and they are always going to stay in business because as long as there is poverty, there is resources available for them. I believe in educating. I believe in educating the entire rental community, but that's just me. So let me finish your comments here. I'm gonna go to the tips for the landlords. I'm gonna give you best case scenario. I'm gonna give you worst case scenario. I'm gonna give you my email address. But please keep your comments and your questions coming in. I am gonna respond to all of them. I will stay on as long as I have to share this information and to answer your questions today. So you said it's definitely not. You're thinking about getting out next year. So let me just say that if you have a housing participant and you just say, well, you know what? Housing authority, screw you, I'm done, I'm getting out of the program and I'm never renting to Section 8 again. Well, in DC, the laws don't allow you to just flat out terminate a tenant just because you want to be done, meaning that there has to be some sort of lease violation to terminate the lease. Now, you can definitely terminate the contract with the housing authority. Let me just say that you can do that. You can terminate your contract. But here is why I would strongly recommend that you not do that, because you can terminate that contract. The only thing that that's going to do is stop your payment. Because if you terminate that contract with the housing authority, you're not getting paid, but the housing authority can't put the tenant out for you. So the tenant is still going to be there, but now you're not going to get any money from the housing agency. So please speak to a landlord and tenant attorney who can give you legal advice on what strategy you can go if the tenant is violating the lease and you need to take the tenant to court and things of that nature. But to just say that you're going to not participate in the program, maybe double think that one. All right. So due to lower rents, no accountability to tenants, etc. I get it. You said you can't do it anymore. Listen, I had a young lady and I shared this. She gave me her permission to share. I shared in one of my previous segments that had a young lady who was so frustrated with her tenant. She had a tenant from hell who was a professional tenant. This tenant knew the system. The tenant woke up just to push her buttons and knew how to get over and emphatically did that over and over and over. And so the owner said, Carissa, I wish I could burn the house with the tenant inside. Real talk, true story. Sometimes things and people will push you to that point. I get it. I get it. All right. So let me go on. Yukiko, you said, are there funding available for the significant damage caused by a tenant which cannot be covered by the security deposit? This is a huge problem. So Yukiko, yes and no. So it just depends on what program that housing participant is in. So if it's, for instance, rapid rehousing can help offset some of those funds. There's a small pocket of funding, well, smaller pocket of funding for those local vouchers versus the federal vouchers. So it just depends on what program. But yes, there is some funding available. But definitely with the rapid rehousing, which comes through like DHS and those local community organizations, there is some funding available that can assist you with that. They are going to continue to lose landlord. Honestly, I listen. I agree, and I definitely I can submit to that. That the city, the housing agencies, they're going to lose some really good landlords if they don't get a grip. They don't get a handle on the problem if they don't educate these tenants. They have to put money into educating these tenants. All right, let me keep going here. Hello, Angela Isaac. You said you agree with education. Education is the key. Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in. Lachelle, you said for the first time, the inspector held the tenant accountable. Woohoo! She had to clean the carpet and oven, and it was not your responsibility finally. So see, things are changing. You just have to make sure that you stay on top of what's happening. And in many situations, the agency, the housing agency, because Lachelle, I know that this is a housing participant. So in many cases, the housing inspectors will cite the tenants, right? But although they are citing the tenant, and Lachelle, I know that I've been to your property, so I know that you got a really solid system in place and that you take care of all of your properties. But that's the one and the biggest piece of advice I can give landlords is to make sure that you know the condition of the property and that you're doing your job, so that when the housing agencies send their inspector out, the findings are not on you, they're on the tenant. And if you see something and you know the tenant is responsible, make sure that tenant understand, hey, we came out today and we saw that the carpet was dirty. We saw that the oven was filthy. We saw that there were lots of dirt rings in the tub. Don't judge the tenants, but just have an honest conversation, educating the tenants on how important it is for them to do their part to clean up, because it feels good to come home to a clean home, right? And some of these tenants don't work, some do, but just express to them the importance of cleaning up right away versus allowing things to linger, because it's much harder to get 50 rings out of a tub when it's much easier. Like if they take a bath or a shower, they just wipe it when they finish. It's much easier to take care of it right away instead of allowing those things to linger. All right, so I'm going to take a look at this comment, and then I'm going to give my tips for landlords. She is not paying her utility bills. She has racked up significantly amount to it. It's a lease violation. Okay, so in that case, yes, I would definitely recommend that you explore your legal options to enforce your lease by taking that tenant to court. All right, so let me go to my comment for you as landlords. Then I'm going to go over some best case and worst case scenarios. So I know landlords, you're looking for answers, and I want you to definitely know and understand that there is sometimes it makes you feel good to build a positive reputation, have good relationships with your tenants. So consider these tips. When it comes to rental property, make sure that you are maintaining that property in a way that's decent, safe, and sanitary, right? It's just an ethical thing to do, right? Making sure that you inspect your properties timely, that you know the condition. If you know that something needs to be repaired, go ahead and make the repair. Go ahead and pay that contractor, because in this situation, this landlord, it cost this owner $5 million for repairs that were needed, right? And so I'm sure that the repair bill wasn't $5 million, but because they did not make the repairs, the judge ordered this owner to cut the rents in half. Okay. And so that is a significant amount of money. That's a big chunk of money. That's a huge setback. That's a $5 million mistake. All right. And so make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do. Document the property. And if it's a situation where maybe you don't have the money to make the repairs, maybe find a cheaper contractor, maybe find someone who is maybe like a handy person to get those repairs done. Because here's the thing, and especially in Washington, D.C., if you don't make the repairs, the tenants can call to report and to complain about it. And tenants are watching, and I've told tenants and will tell tenants to follow up with their landlord. And if the landlord is not making repairs, to contact authorities, because everybody deserves to live in a decent home. Okay? Being a landlord or a property manager is so much more than collecting money at the beginning of the month. You got to make sure you have repairs completed. And I know sometimes some of you don't have the money in place to make the repairs. I get it, which is why I say, listen, put a certain percentage aside each month. If it's just 2%, 3%, 5% of the income that's coming in, put it in a maintenance escrow account so that when something happens, and notice that I did say when, because something will happen at some point. Okay, a pipe will break, a toilet may get clogged. That's just the nature of rental housing. Things will happen. You don't know when, right? But you want to make sure that you have funding in place to pay for the repairs, because the laws don't care that you don't have money to take care of the repairs, because they believe and assume that because you are running a business, that you have the finances and resources to take care of the repairs. So 2%, 3%, maybe increase it as you will. Make sure you have something set aside, or start working towards it. Worst case scenario, reach out to one of the, so I told you all that I'm a property management educator. There are a lot of students who need intern experience, right? And so maybe reach out to some of these organizations or schools who have maintenance workers and they need experience. Now, it may not be top quality, right? But it would potentially help you if you're in a situation where you can't afford to make the repairs. So that's just a recommendation, something to consider. All right, so we understand and we know that failure to do so can lead to lawsuits and financial loss. In this situation, these tenants, they took the owner to court. Not only did it cost this owner a lot of money, but now this owner has filed for bankruptcy. So that's a double negative. So please make sure that you do that. Also, engage in open communication with your tenants. This can help resolve issues before it escalates to a legal battle. If you're communicating with your tenants, you say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we received your complaint about whatever, needing a new refrigerator. We're going to take care of it within, if it's not an emergency, right? Of course, with an emergency, you want to act promptly. But if it's not an emergency, you want to provide a timeline. When will the repair be made? And communicate that and stick to what you say. Say what you mean what you say, and actively complete whatever that repair or the renovation is in that time frame. And if it doesn't happen, follow up. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, listen, I know I said we were going to make the repairs by September the 15th. Unfortunately, the part is it's on backlog, but we're going to make sure we get it completed as soon as whenever, right? Just follow up, because sometimes tenants just need to know that you're taking actions in the steps moving towards the repairs being completed. But to absolutely do nothing, or to argue or to debate, I've seen owners and property managers debate and argue with tenants and cuss tenants out. Doesn't make sense to me, because that's adding fuel to the fire. If they're already upset that repairs are not made, and now they have to engage with this confrontational type of landlord or owner, that's going to make it worse, right? You're definitely going to likely get a complaint filed against you with the inspector's office. So don't put yourself in that situation. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. All right. So here's another tip for landlords today. Definitely consider the financial implication of potential lawsuits. All right. Tenants are going to file more lawsuits. I said it earlier in the year. I said it. I was the first to say it, that we're going to see a lot more lawsuits by tenants. And I had no idea that it would be on this level, but this is not the end of it. We're going to see a lot more lawsuits where tenants are going to file complaints and get judgments against owners. It is going to happen. It is unfortunate that some people do not get this information that you're getting, that you're receiving today. All right. I do this every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So those of you, you've been following me, you know, I share tips, I share practices. I absolutely enjoy what I do. But here is what you need to know. is that when you're not making repairs, it will impact your bottom line financially. So make sure that you put it in your budget. As a matter of fact, you should be working on your budget for 2024 as of now, right? You should be doing your forecasting, your budget planning. You should make sure that you allocate money for renovations. You should earmark money for unexpected vacancy turnovers. If it's appliances, replacing carpet, parking lot repair, paving the parking lot, restriping the parking lot, because that's important too. That's part of curb appeal. That's a whole nother section. But this is part of what I do, right? When I do an audit for my clients, I look at everything in the rental property and make sure that they are set up for success, because if not, this could be you making national headlines. And I definitely don't want that for you. But tenants do have rights. And so keep in mind the legal action that could be taken against you. And it could be significant. This landlord, $5 million they had to pay. They were required to reduce the rent. So they had to essentially pay their tenants to live in the property. They couldn't afford it. They filed for bankruptcy. How heartbreaking or troubling is that? Now, how involved was that owner with the property management staff? I don't know. But if you are owning property and you have people managing your property, you need to know that they know what they're doing. Because anybody can say, oh, well, yeah, I manage property. But do they have the experience to successfully manage your business? Don't just hand your baby over and not look back to make sure that the baby is taken care of. Okay? So stay on top of your business. Owners, please do that. All right. And if you are a property manager, take a class. I teach property management. Take a class. Know what you are supposed to do, because if not, it can come back to haunt you in a very, very expensive way. All right. So let me go back to the comments here. Hey, Jennifer, thank you for tuning in. Beautiful. Okay. All right. I hope I'm good. Am I good? Am I good? Can you see me? Can you hear me okay? Show me some love in the comments. Want to make sure that I'm not frozen, and thank you for the comment. All right. I'm going to keep going. So in this situation and in this story, there are some pros to this. There are some pros. There are some cons. I'm going to give best case scenario. I'm going to give worst case scenario, but I want to make sure that I'm not frozen. So family, let me know. Am I frozen? It's fine now. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so here's some pros in this situation. So the judge ordered the tenants. The judge ordered the owner to reduce the tenant's rent by 50%. So maybe this could be a temporary financial burden, right? Maybe it's not a long-term financial burden, but maybe it's just a temporary financial burden. That's one of the pros. But then also, here's a thing. So when it comes to tenants, hey, Commissioner Van Gosry, so I'm going to come to your comment in a little bit. And please share this. Here is a pro for the tenant. This situation brings about awareness and empowerment. Remember, I said that tenants have rights. Tenants everywhere have rights. And so this is a huge wake-up call. I want tenants, listen, I want y'all to share this with tenants. I want y'all to share this with landlords. I want y'all to share this with City Council. Send this to Robert White. He is the DC City Council member who oversees the Housing Committee for Washington, DC, because he needs to know how this impacts landlords as well as tenants. But in any event, this is definitely awareness for tenants. Tenants have definitely been made aware of their rights and have empowered them to take necessary action against the landlord. I know some landlords don't really like me right now. I know some of you are really probably rolling your eyes, but here's the thing. If you're a good landlord, this doesn't impact you. I want landlords who have substandard practices to hear this segment and make changes so that it does not impact you. And again, it costs nothing but your time to show up to get this information. Now, of course, if you hire me as a consultant or to come in to do an audit, that's going to cost you money. But to hear what I'm telling you today, and you take action and you change your business practice, you're in the clear. It shouldn't offend you. You shouldn't be bothered. But for those landlords who are a little shysty, or maybe their work ethic is not the greatest, now is the time to make a change. Now is the greatest time, unlike ever before, to pivot. We are in a new season. I make no apologies. I am unapologetic for sharing this information. I love landlords, but I also love tenants. I'm just that person. My goal is to make sure that the rental community is an educated community. Let's focus on other issues in life other than rental property and the issues of making repairs, not making repairs, and landlords and tenants taking each other to court. Like, if we could just do the right thing, learn how to just coexist together, I think we'll see a bigger difference. All right, so here is a con with this article, in this situation. There is an uncertain future for these tenants at that property. 2,500 tenants. Okay, 2,500 tenants. They don't know what their future holds as it pertains to their housing. Will they stay there? Will a new owner come in? Will the repairs be completed? Will they have to move? Will they get assistance with packing up their stuff? Will they get assistance with moving expenses? Will they get assistance with application fees? Will they get assistance with security deposits? Will they get assistance with relocating from one place to the next? And one of the residents that spearheaded this lawsuit had been there for 40 years. So all those memories will now have to potentially be moved on to another place. Like, there are a lot of moving parts, and I don't think that a lot of people go down levels deep to really understand how this impacts families. So it's a sad day for the landlord because they're bankrupt and they still owe this money. But it's a sad day for tenants who don't know when they're going to finally have a home that they'll be happy to live in. All right, so here's a best case scenario. Let me come to your comment in the chat box. Commissioner, you said project-based Section 8 building opt out of HUD program through their life cycle programs. There would not be any more 30-year contract as in the past. Yes, that's true. That's true that some of these programs are coming to their life cycle. Now, some of these programs are getting extensions though, Commissioner. Now, it may not be for 30 years, but they are still getting an extension or renewing those contracts. And just because the contract is extended or being renewed for another 5 or 10 or 15 years, because in some of those communities, those contracts are for 15 years, does it mean that the repairs are completed in those projects? Not necessarily. So we're going to see some more lawsuits. We're definitely going to see some more lawsuits because I know that a lot of people are tuning in. A lot of people are sharing this information, and I'm encouraging owners of these properties to hold agencies responsible. So if you have or if you know someone who has a contract and it's a project-based building, if you have a substantial amount of vacancies because maybe a housing agency has delayed inspections or getting people qualified or doing their part to get tenants in, then definitely hold them accountable and responsible as well, right? You don't have to sit around and wait for your property, your business to go down a drain. You have to take control of your own destiny. All right, so let me say that. You said that inspections are being held in HUD buildings at the present. Yes, so inspections are back in place. And I know that for the housing agencies that were doing virtual inspections, that they are now starting to do inspections in person again, which is good. I know that a lot of people did like those virtual inspections. Let me say, I love virtual inspections. Um, I had one community that I was managing, and they had, this was, I think this is in, I think it might have been 2021. In that property, I think I had 52 housing inspections in 1 week in the same building, somewhere along that line. And so I just prepped my team. We had already gone through it. We had already made the repairs. The biggest thing for me was coordinating that virtual inspection with different inspectors, right? But I'm also a housing inspector. Hey, Lynette, thank you so much for tuning in from Charlotte. And so I like the virtual inspection because we didn't have to wait for a specific time for the inspector to come. Sometimes there can be this anxiety over not knowing what time they're going to be there. And I like the virtual inspections. I knew how to prepare because I am a housing inspector. And by way of announcement, and let me just put a plug in there since you shared this, Commissioner, because I am a housing inspector. If you need your property pre-inspected, please reach out to me. Let me give you all my email address because I told you that I would. Send me an email. My team and I will come out. We will conduct an inspection of your rental property in the DC metropolitan area, just to make sure that it's ready to pass inspection. If there are any deficiencies, you'll get a report right away to know what repairs you need to make. Because here's the thing, especially vacant property, bricks and mortar don't pay rent, don't put no money in your bank account, right? You have no income coming in if you have these vacant units. And so many of you know I've helped a lot of you over the years. And so I am now implementing that service again. And so if you have rental property, you need it inspected, we want to make sure that you pass your inspection the first time, because you don't want to wait, because there's going to be a huge backlog. These housing agencies, they're trying to lease up a lot of families, right? And so you don't want to be caught in that mix. There's going to be a bottleneck. I know that sometimes that can be frustrating. You're trying to get these properties leased up so that you can get paid, so that as real estate agents, you can get your commission. So let your clients know if they need some assistance. That is my email address at the bottom of the screen. I will be happy to help if we can. Just contact me. My team and I will definitely get on a call with you, see what your needs are. If you need consulting, if you need an audit of your property, making sure that you have policies and procedures in place, this is what I do. We will definitely work with you, okay? The inspections is only applicable for the DC metropolitan area. For everything else, out-of-state property, North Carolina, South Carolina, for the consulting or the auditing, we can work with you virtually, and we will travel. So just contact me by way of email. That is my email address, info@landlordlife.com. All right, so I do hope this information was helpful today. Thank you so much for joining me. Please make sure that you are joining me each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. I know that today I went extremely long, but I had a lot of information to share, and I had a lot of comments, questions, and I wanted to make sure that I was answering all of your questions for you. So again, thank you for joining me today. Please stay connected, and also please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me, Landlord Life. I'm on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online. And by way of announcement, I am implementing a 3-day online workshop. It's a boot camp for landlords. If you are interested, please email me. I want to provide that information. I'll share more information in the upcoming weeks. Also, I will be doing an in-person workshop pertaining to inspections, showing owners how to conduct housing inspections, how often you should conduct inspections. We'll provide you with documents. We'll provide you with forms. We'll provide you with free software that you can use to conduct your own inspection. So that is it. That's all I wanted to share today. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Was this helpful for you today? Was this helpful? Please let me know in the comment section before I log off. Was this helpful for you today? I always want to make sure that I'm providing information that is helpful and it is relevant. And again, this is what I do each and every Monday. I'm live on Facebook. I'm live on Instagram. I'm live on YouTube. I'm also live on Twitter. I also want to thank my students who are tuned in. I want to thank those of you who I've worked with as clients. You have been an absolute treasure to work with. I do appreciate you. I appreciate all of your feedback. If there is a topic that you would like for me to discuss, please email me. Let me know. I will cover it. If it's something that I don't know, if it's some information I need to get to you, I promise I would definitely do that for you. All right. So, you said you don't see it. My email address is at the bottom of the screen, info@landlordlife.com. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Again, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I hope to see you all next week right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And please remember that I'm available. My team and I will come out. We'll help you out with your inspections. We'll make sure that you have policies and procedures in place. I'm going to have an in-person workshop in the DC metropolitan area. So for more information, please email me. I'm Carissa, your host, the landlord and tenant coach. This is an absolute pleasure to just come into your homes, your devices, and bring you this information. I'll see you all next week.